Well, hello there, and thank you very much for clicking on this video today. So, no video yesterday. I just felt so unwell. I was just sick all day, and that is that's what talking about TERFs and J.K. Rowling does to you. it makes you physically unwell. But anyway, so I'll just take my sip of tea. Ooh, nice. So, anyway, we've talked a lot about Palestine action. We've talked a lot about the fact that they are prescribed a terrorist organisation, which is completely unjust. And myself and a lot of other people who have talked about this particular issue have said this is going to open the floodgates to people being charged as terrorists, even though they're blatantly not terrorists, and are going to be charged as terrorists in ways in which are going to completely remove their right to defend themselves against such charges, as was done in the previous case with the so-called Filton 4. And so now this is actually happening with other people. So this is a story that I'm a little bit behind on, I confess, but it is a story that I wanted to talk about, so it doesn't bother me. So this is something that's coming from Declassified UK, The Guardian has also talked about it, quite a few places have talked about it. So, a judge intends to consider what you might call a terrorist connection after convicting 5 people of damage to a Barclays bank in Burnley. So, let's go into the details. So, 5 Palestine action activists are faced being sentenced as terrorists for breaking windows and throwing red paint at a branch of Barclays Bank in Lancashire. So these people are Brendan O'Hagan, Amanda Kelly, Mira Atwizar, I think that's pronounced, Mohammed Malik, and Alma Yanif, who, the last person there, is 70. You know, there's nothing strikes me as a dangerous terrorist as a 70-year-old. So these people were found guilty of causing damage during a direct action protest in Burnley in August 2024. So this is a couple of years ago. They targeted the bank specifically because Barclays Bank held shares at that time. I believe now they have now sold them. They held shares at that time to the Israeli weapons firm Elbit Systems. Now, Elbit Systems is a company that is making money supplying weapons to a genocide in Palestine. So that is what they're doing. You know, they are profiteering from mass murder. And so these people were protesting against Barclays, highlighting their own financial involvement in this despicable company, and pointing out that Barclays Bank is in itself profiteering from mass murder. So, after last month's verdicts, the judge, Philip Parry, told the prosecution and the defence he intended to consider a terrorist connection to the offence, despite the fact that the jury nor defendants have previously been informed that was likely or even a possibility. So we can see this as a real trend whereby, because of our screwy laws, essentially, the judge is essentially able to completely get round a jury and completely get round the defendants themselves. Because if the jury had been told that this was likely to happen, that they could be found guilty of terrorism, there's a good chance they would have found them not guilty. It doesn't always happen, but when this has happened in the past, and juries are actually quite willing to acquit and find people not guilty for direct action protests and things like that. It's happened before. It's happened relatively recently as well. And it also means that the defendants themselves have been denied a right to a fair trial, in my opinion. Because how can you organise your defence when you haven't been told that you could be sentenced under terrorism? You know, you could be sentenced as a terrorist. How can you defend against that when you haven't even been told that is possible to happen? It's completely unjust. So, to give a bit more context to this, so 4 other Palestine action activists last month became the first defendants convicted of property damage whose offending during a raid on Elbit Systems factory in Bristol was deemed by Mr. Justice Johnson, our old friend there, post-conviction of having a terrorist connection. And what you can see now is that the judge, in this case Parry, attached Johnson's judgment when asking lawyers for submissions on whether there was a terrorist connection in the Barclay case. Malik, one of the protesters, has said, the judge and the CPS are now seeking to sentence us as terrorists for red paint and a few splintered windows. This goes far beyond the charges before the court and raises serious concern about the increasing use of counter-terrorism legislation to persecute political dissent, which is exactly what this is. And it exposes the cowardice and the utter injustice of the Crown Prosecution Service and the judges themselves, because they know perfectly well that if they charge them with terrorism right off the bat, right off the bat, as I've said many times, they would face significant pushback, and it's quite likely that the jury in those cases would have found them not innocent of those charges, because they're blatantly ridiculous and absurd on the face of them. Yeah. So now they seek to basically get round the jury system and get round seemingly even the fact that defendants have a right to a fair defence in order to basically prescribe them as terrorists. So let's continue with this. So the attempt to now sentence us as, this is what Malik is continuing to say, the attempt to now sentence us as terrorists demonstrates the extremely dangerous precedent set by Judge Johnson, who sentenced Pro-Palestine action protesters as terrorists for destroying Israeli quadruped drones. The Palestine Action co-founder Huda Amori said that it was an example of the floodgates flowing from Johnson's decision, which it is. So one thing to bear in mind is that the bank protest took place before Palestine Action was banned as a terrorist group and was not assessed by the Home Secretary nor officials to be a terrorism incident at the time. So they are retrospectively going back in time and going, no, now it's a terrorist organisation. We didn't say at the time that it was, because it's stupid and absurd to suggest that it is, but now that we've been able to get away with saying stupid and absurd things, now we're going to go back in time and then rewrite history and say, no, this was a terrorist incident. Actually, we didn't say it at the time, but now it is. So, responding to the Judge Parry, the CPS argued that the Barclays 5 should be sentenced as terrorists, despite prosecutors having not raised the possibility at all before or during the trial. And this is from The Guardian here. The Guardian understands that the CPS is arguing that the terrorist connection only came to light from admissions made by defendants at the trial, including relating to their affiliation to Palestine Action, and that the protest was part of a wider campaign against Barclays. What they're specifically referencing there, because I did do a little bit more looking into this, is that the defendants, when they're on the stand, intimated or suggested that they had vague links to Palestine Action, but Palestine Action was not designated as a terrorist organisation at the time. So they were doing absolutely nothing wrong by being associated with this group. Legally, they did nothing wrong, but now retrospectively, it's been argued that they have. When that is allowed into law, when basically laws, when an organisation is unjustly, in my opinion, prescribed a terrorist organisation, and then that basically means that anyone that has had any contact with them or has organised with them or has been engaged with them in some way, a huge amount of people now face the possibility of being described as terrorists, despite the fact that when they were involved with this organisation, it was not considered a terrorist organisation at the time. So the director of the human rights organisation Liberty, Akiko Hart, said that the case further highlighted the deep flaws in the UK's counter-terrorist laws, which capture activity most people would not even consider terrorism. Similar incidents by climate activists in the past has not been deemed as terrorist incidents. For example, 7 Extinction Rebellion protesters were given suspended sentences for causing more than £100,000 worth of damage by breaking windows at Barclays headquarters in London in 2023. That's coming from The Guardian directly. And so you can see that people in the past have done similar things and have not faced these consequences at all. This is completely arbitrary, and this is only because of the Israeli lobby basically seeking to criminalize direct action against people that are perpetrating and profiting from mass murder and genocide. And so let's continue what The Guardian has to say. So in the Filton case, activists received lengthy custodial sentences. They will be subject to 15 years of terrorist notification requirements on release, which includes informing the police of any new device, relationship, bank accounts or addresses. Amnesty International and Liberty were among the critics of the terrorist connection finding, describing it as a misuse of counter-terrorism powers, which it is. It is absolutely a misuse of the counter-terrorist powers. A terrorist sentencing also means the defendants serve at least 2/3 of their tariff in prison, much longer than is the norm. To obtain to parole, they must rescind their political views. It was reported back in 2024 that Barclays had sold all of its Elbit shares, which I alluded to earlier. The bank had previously said it held them only in relation to client-driven transactions. Now they've been an investor or a shareholder of the arms company. That's what they have to say about it. I'm not particularly sure I'm convinced by that. The sentencing in the Burnley case is scheduled for September the 4th, and the CPS and the judiciary, funnily enough, declined to comment. Unsurprisingly, it's always the same. Whenever they come under scrutiny, they always decline to comment. So, I don't know if there's that much more to say. I'll try and summarise. But we can see how the idiotic decision by Judge Johnson in the previous case, the so-called Filton 4, is already causing significant damage to wrecking people's lives and sentencing people as terrorists who are not terrorists. The worst that they might have done is cause some mild criminal damage. That is it. That is the... because when I think of terrorism, I don't know about you, but I tend to think of people that plant bombs, make explosive devices, or people that, commit things like assassinations, things like that of that nature is what you typically associate with terrorists, not spray painting a building and damaging some windows. And I've seen some truly idiotic and stupid thoughts and remarks on this, who were trying to coddle Barclays Bank. Barclays Bank is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, Somehow, I don't think that some mild criminal damage is really going to affect them that much. You know what? I think they'll be fine. I think the multi-billion-dollar corporation will be fine in the long run. It's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous that... And the thing is that the people that are doing this, the Crown Prosecution Service and the judges, they know that this is wrong. And you can tell that by the way in which they're doing it. If you genuinely believe that what they were doing is terrorism, then you would actually charge them as terrorists. You wouldn't you wouldn't try and sneakily and connivingly and in a very weasel-like way basically use the legal system to charge them as terrorists after the fact. You only do that when you want to basically persecute them and prosecute them, and to set this is a warning, essentially, is what this is. This is a warning to everyone that if you try to do things like this, if you try to oppose Israeli genocide, if you try to oppose the businesses that profiteer and support Israeli genocide, we will come after you and we will prosecute you as terrorists, and we will do it in the most conniving way possible. We won't even tell you that we're charging you as terrorists. In fact, we'll just try and find you guilty of something else, then after the fact, then add that on top of it, so you don't even have the right to defend yourself against those kinds of accusations. But anyway, what an aggravating story, but thank you very much for clicking on this video today, and I will catch you later, so you know what, you have a good day wherever you are. Bye bye.